Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk Food Safety with Tia and Jill. We're
Hello,
excited
hello,
you're here.
everyone.
Yes. If you are listening in, we love to hear where you are listening in from. Please put in the comments where you're at and also list what kind of weather you're having because, I'm in Baltimore and typically we're a lot warmer than where Jill is up north of Minneapolis. And it's been a little flip flop this week where you guys have been like in the
It's been
90s.
crazy. Yeah, we even hit like 100, I think on Tuesday, and it was for us here, like way too hot.
Oh, so yeah, I know. Well, I'm originally from Tennessee, and a lot of my family have been saying that it's hitting, upper 90s. But Baltimore, we've been in this little sweet spot where, it's been really hot during the day, but the last few nights has even been chilly outside. So I'm like, what is going on? But it's nice to hear that Chicago, Minneapolis, that you all are getting some warm weather.
We are. And these are the days that I love being in food because, right, you're like, out on the dock and you're like, keep the doors closed.
Right.
I mean, even more so than others because it's so hot that you open them up and like everything seems to be warm and
Right. That is
the
that's
struggles.
true. You're bringing back some nightmares there.
Oh, that's just all the fun in food. And if you're on, I bet you've experienced some of that fun too. We love hearing those stories.
Hmm.
Oh, and Ashley, right? Thanks for putting
Right.
in there. Texas gets hot, and you probably are working through
Burning.
this too.
Yes. Yes. I lived in Houston for a period of time, and
Oh,
there's sometimes that you just look out the window and you really want to be outside, but it's so hot. It's so hot out there. You're like, I'll just wait till like 6 p.m.
oh yeah. I think Tia, didn't I tell you yesterday we were bantering like who was going to take the dog out because we're like it's so hot. Who's taking her outside? And finally, my kids were like, "Well, can't you just let her out the door?" And I'm like, "Oh, she doesn't always do her business when you just let her out. She likes to go smell and sniff out rabbits. So no."
Right. You gotta
So
take her.
but the weather is more normal today, so everything seems to be better.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, you know what? It's today we're talking about leadership mindset. So, like, we need to get in the right mindset for this warm weather, right? We can do a lot of
Hmm.
things when it's nice and warm outside. So, we
Yes.
shouldn't
Well, yeah,
complain.
and speaking of the show today, if it is your first time joining us, I'm Jill and this is Tia. And together our whole focus is how do we help you love your job? How do we help you be happier in what you're doing and help move your organization to a space where it's not so much work, or at least how about not so much firefighting? And
Right.
we know that all wraps up into the food safety culture that we're really trying to move to.
Yeah.
And so we're all about like, how do we help you do that? Because we've had a boatload of experience and studying and helping. And that's what we love to do here on this live Real Talk Food Safety Show that we do every week at Wednesdays at noon Eastern Time.
Yes. And we love for you all to be with us and talk with us and share your comments and share your perspective because that's why we decided to do the show is because we really want to share with you, learn from you, and
Mhm.
we use the hashtag better together because it's true. We are better together. We're better when we're sharing best practices, when we're learning from one another, when we're helping each other prevent large food safety and quality issues, right? So
Mhm.
that's why we're here. So please add your comments. And even if you're listening on replay, use hashtag replay so we'll know that you're listening. And we go back and we have conversations and we answer your questions there. So please add your comments because we love seeing them.
Mhm. Yeah, we will. And today we're doing a topic that is way near and dear to my heart, mindset.
Yes, leadership mindset. So, if you've followed us at all, you've definitely heard us say more than once that being a technical expert does not make someone a technical leader. And the reason is because the skills, tools, and mindset that brought you success as a technical expert are not the same as what you'll need to be a successful leader,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
And right. And Tia, it was great because while you were out having a baby, right? In April, we focused a lot on technical leadership.
Mhm.
And in our April episode, we got to talk with Annie Ellerman from McCormick. And she really talked a lot about, right, being a leader. Like if you get promoted or you move to a new role, it's not about doing more of what you already do or just
Right.
doing more of it or doing it better or for example, it would be like, well, instead of doing SPC charts, I can now do designed experiments. Or if I
Right.
used to write SOPs for a process, now I get to be program developer. Like those are
Right.
great skills, but those aren't the skills that help you lead teams.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And when we find that even leaders that do that, that
Mhm.
really being an elevated version of what they were before, their team feel like they're micromanaging. They
Mhm.
really can't sort of foster a successful team, a high performing team, because they're not really allowing their team to grow and step
No.
into the roles that this leader used to be in, right?
Yeah, and I always say it's like you've moved to be an individual contributor with a bigger title.
Right,
And
right,
when we have a bigger title, we actually want you to do bigger things and lead people to be able to have the success that you found and that drove you to have more passion in this industry.
right. Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
So, some of the tools and skills that really don't help us when we're shifting into a technical leader, there's a few that kind of comes to our
Hmm.
minds, right, that we wanted to share. And one is that working hard individually, right? So like you've done the work, your work is your work. You're not the
Hmm.
one working through a team. You're not really working through your team to generate outcomes. You're just doing it yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like you're really leaning on your own self to get things done versus your team.
And I think sometimes we think about like our role on a project, like a project team,
Hmm.
and that we are working together and together we're collectively making outcomes, and we are. And those project experiences have some base skills that will help you with leadership, but in its core self they're not about moving all the hurdles away and
Right.
creating
Yeah.
challenges and empowering everybody. It's
Yeah.
being a leader is more intentional than being a member on a project team.
Mm. That's so true. Like and we use the word intentional all the time because it's true. In order to be a
Hmm.
leader, you really have to be intentional about the work that you do,
Hmm.
conversations that you have, the people that you meet, the circles that you're in. It really has to be intentional for you to be a leader and grow as a leader,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. I know when I was early in my career, I always thought I had to figure things out on my own,
Yeah.
especially because in many times I was the only person who was technically trained. And we're also taught, right? Like, hey, we're supposed to go study and we take our own exams. We're supposed to figure it out on ourselves.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think, on one hand, it's kind of cool because when I feel like I have to figure it out on my own, sometimes it helps me be more curious and I
Yes.
explore more about, like, how am I going to get down this path? But I also have had many times where that does not serve me well
No.
because I've stepped back because I'm afraid to ask because I think people will think I'm maybe not competent or maybe
Mm.
I don't have the answers or like, how did she get that role if she doesn't
Yeah.
know the answer to that?
Right. Right.
I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but that's like one of
Yes.
those downsides of feeling as a technical expert when you feel like you have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. And you feel like you have to know it all.
Hmm.
You feel like you have to know all of these different parts. But we know the more that we grow as an individual, the more that we grow in title and in role, we really are becoming broader and broader.
Hmm.
So we're going to take over some areas that we don't know every little bit about. That's why we have teams, right? We have
Hmm.
teams in order to be those subject matter experts for us. And it's hard. It's hard to step from being a subject matter expert on your line, on your product, on
Hmm.
these
A
systems,
program, yeah.
on programs, right? To saying, okay, now I have 5 or 6 other programs that I might not be the system matter expert on, but I'm still responsible for.
Hmm.
That's difficult to do sometimes.
Well, it is because we're so used to harnessing and like sourcing from within to find answers.
Mhm.
But now we're supposed to harness that from others. And we're
Right.
supposed to ask others to bring their perspectives and to bring
Mhm.
their experience and for them to like empower them to go find
Mhm.
information so they can grow as well.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm.
Another example is around, knowing that you can do things better than anyone else, right? And so it's hard to let go. And we find it in leaders all the time, whether you're transitioning into a leadership role or leaders that have been there for a while. If you're talking with a leader and they say, well, I just do it because I know the right way to do it, or this person works so slow that, I can do it so much quicker and then we'll have it,
Mhm.
or every time they do it, they really miss some things that I would catch. So I just go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
If you're saying that right now, we say stop what you're doing. Stop what you're doing, because you really are being that individual contributor. You're being that tactical executor. And that's
Mhm.
really not what your organization needs from their leaders.
No. No, and I love that you bring those up because we've experienced those. They're
Mhm.
relatable.
Yeah,
And I'm curious if you're, whoever's out there, like what other things have you seen or experienced that kind of fall into these categories?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Because
Cuz
we've been there. One of the things I used to say to my teams, and this is another way that you can get some really great feedback. I actually told one of my teams that um, I'm working on giving tasks and saying exactly what I need, not
mm,
necessarily how to complete it. Because
mm,
I know that if I say, I would love for you to complete an SOP, and it comes back to me, I'm thinking, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. Or I wouldn't have used those colors, or I wouldn't have used those words. When sometimes it is absolutely fine that it doesn't sound like the SOP that Tia wrote. Like that's completely, it covers all the bases. You have all the things you need in it. And that's one thing that as a young leader, I really focused on. And I even told my team, this is the leadership attribute I'm working on. So I want to be
mm,
better at that. And I remember my team saying, "Oh, you're really good at that. We don't notice that." And I'm like, oh, whew, "That's good, because it's like I've really been working on it, and I want people to bring their own creativity to it, not just try to mirror something that I've done."
mm.
And that's all about knowing that, thinking that better about how to put something together in a certain type of way. So,
Yeah.
I've definitely dealt with that in my career and really had to focus on that as
Oh,
I've
and I love that you share that because, well, that's mindset, right?
grown.
All of
Right.
all of the things we talk about roll into our mindset, and can we intentionally shift from here's what I
Mhm.
do as an individual contributor to my role as a leader.
Yeah.
And so even with that, Tia, right? That's like how do I shift from I have to make that outcome to how do I champion others to have those outcomes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I love that phrase. How do I champion others to bring those outcomes, right? To accomplish
Mhm.
the goals, to go out and find, right? To
Yeah.
grow, to learn, right? Versus
Mhm.
me doing it
Yeah, because as the leader, that is our entire role is how do we help others grow and develop so collectively we have outcomes. So
all. Right.
whether it's I have to figure it out to how do I help others source their
Mm-hmm.
inner wisdom or
Right.
external wisdom to wow, I can do this better than anyone to how do I champion others to do this and maybe even improve upon what I've done?
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. So that they can bring a different perspective,
Yeah.
right, to the conversation versus
Mhm.
having myself be the only sole contributor to it.
Yeah. And
Right.
I mean, I personal experience, it is hard. It
Yeah.
is hard to make this shift, especially if you're not aware that it needs to be done. And in
Mm-hmm.
part, I
Mm.
mean, we talk about
Yeah.
this because people think of mindset as like something soft and squishy, and it's really underappreciated in the corporate world.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It really
Mhm.
is. And but what you find is that the greatest leaders, the most effective leaders, they have a different mindset. They
Mhm.
really do show up a different way, and they focus on mindset. Right. Like if you read some of the, some articles, interviews, or even books that some of the greatest leaders across the world has put out, they really spend a lot of time talking about their mindset. How do they get into the right mindset in the mornings?
Mhm.
We all read, oh, I get up at 5 o'clock, I work out, I do this, those type of stories, right? Those type of stories are really around mindset. How do you
Mhm.
get into the right mindset for your day? to tackle
Yeah.
the biggest stresses, to be able to step into the role that you either have set up for yourself because you're an entrepreneur, you're the CEO of the organization, or a role that you've been promoted into, right? And now you're stepping into that role and being that leader.
Yeah. And, even on top of that, I think mindset is really about, I always talk about sourcing our internal power, but it's really about valuing ourselves as well. So when we
Mm-hmm.
think about, I need to make this shift, or how could this shift benefit what I'm doing and how I'm leading others? Like,
Yeah.
how do we do that? And, that comes from doing things like, how do I ask for help?
Mm-hmm.
How do we ask for someone to support us or sponsor us to get the help that we want or need? Because right, mindset is these intrinsic behaviors that we have, or these
Mm-hmm.
intrinsic thoughts that lead to behaviors that we
Right.
see then as outcomes. And this
Yes,
is the same thing we talk about with food safety culture. Food safety
absolutely.
culture is all about mindset shift.
It is. And that's why it's hard to change culture, right?
Hmm.
Is because it's hard to change a mindset. It's hard to change our own mindsets even when we want to. And that's what makes culture change so hard. And for us, our clients that we work with, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are growing their business, right? Small business owners. And one of the things that we try to get them to do early on is really start on the right foot around food safety. Because
Hmm.
once you start and you then have to shift a mindset, that is so much harder, right? And we know there's so many companies out there that are not on the right path when it comes to food safety culture. They don't have a great food safety culture. So as
Hmm.
we get into the conversation today and think about leadership mindset, these things are applicable to food safety culture and shifting that culture to be where we, I was going to say want it to be, but ultimately where we need it to be in order
Yeah.
for us to have safe food.
Hmm. Yes. So, Ashley, I like that you're talking about, right? How do we empower people to source from within? And so, helping them find their way to answer the problems that we encounter is the way that we give them the tools, the actually neural pathways that are formed so that they
Mm-hmm.
know that they can do that in other situations.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And
so,
that's how a lot of people learn as well, where,
mhm,
think about the things that we learn and we're like, oh, yeah, we've been through that situation. Like we were working in the trenches.
mhm,
We now know what we would do differently because we've been there. If someone had given us the answer or said, go and do it this way, we would have never learned to be able to apply that to other situations.
mhm.
Yeah. That's great,
Yes.
Ashley. And welcome,
Yes.
Jennifer. Great to see you.
Yes, yes. Great to have you here and interested in today's topic. If there's
Yeah.
something in particular that has kind of is calling to you and you're curious about, drop us a note because we'd love to know. So,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, because today knowing that mindset is one it's pivotal. And
Hmm.
how do we shift that? And so today we wanted to share Catalyst's 3 perspectives around leadership mindset. And we really weave these into every program that we have because we know when you are shifting from being a technical expert, it's really a transformation to be a technical leader.
Right.
And that support is how we like to partner and be on the journey together with people and with clients.
Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
let's dive into the three perspectives that we use, and like you said, it's really the backbone of the leadership work that we do.
Mhm.
And honestly, also our true north as leaders, right? Like obviously,
Mhm.
our programs are built on our work and what we've done throughout our career and what we've learned. So yeah, we use these perspectives, and we've helped grown teams, multiple teams, and clients using these perspectives.
Mhm. So we're going to go through each of these, but the 3 perspectives are how I see myself,
Hmm.
how I see others, and how we see each other.
Yes.
So when we start with perspective 1, how I see myself, it's because self-awareness is the most important aspect to leadership. And
Hmm.
it's not about how much technical knowledge you have, it's how well you know yourself, your blind spots, your strengths, your
Hmm.
thoughts, the behaviors that come from that.
Right, exactly. And then that can help you make decisions when things are happening around you, right? And one of the things we like to say around how I see myself is having this mindset of this is happening for me,
Mhm.
not to me. And
Oh.
when you get into that mindset of this is happening for me because I know that I have blind spots in this area,
Mm.
or this is not my greatest strength. That's why I feel like it's really challenging. But this is happening for me to build on this opportunity so that I can be a stronger leader in the future. Versus saying,
Right.
"Ugh, why is this happening to me? People know that I hate doing this type of work. Why are they giving it to me?" It's really stepping into that mindset of, this is the opportunity for me to grow.
Mhm. And I think that's really important because too often, right, we know it's really hard to shift everybody in the same direction, and we get
Mhm.
frustrated. I've gotten really frustrated. But it wasn't until I was like, "Oh, there's something I'm supposed to learn here." And
Mm,
if I can't look inward to figure out what that is, then I'm never going to get past it. And I'm going to
yes.
be stuck here because I don't have enough self awareness to understand that this is a learning moment for me. It is not
Right.
about blaming others or sitting back and playing victim. Like, oh, poor
Mhm.
me. Why am I always dealing with this? Like, no, I got a lesson here. Wake up.
Exactly. Exactly. When I think back on my experiences, even tough situations. So we've all been in, if you're in food safety and quality, we've all had the conversations of, I need more resources
Hmm.
in order to support the programs, right? And thinking back to those really tough conversations, even conversations that I know people aren't necessarily listening to me, and there's not going to be the outcome I would love for there to be, right? I know that it's not being valued in that same way. Still going through those actions, thinking back, and even in the moment, I really use this as an opportunity to say, okay, let me practice the way I would say this. And how is it landing? And do people understand how I'm communicating it? Even if they're not going to take my feedback or go the direction that I want to go in, did they understand it? So the
Hmm.
next time I have the conversation, I can explain it in similar ways because, an operations counterpart or a finance counterpart do understand. They just are saying, we don't want to spend the money there. Right.
Hmm.
So it's like, even those experiences that are mentally taxing, I was able to learn and take from so I could either share that knowledge or use that in roles into the future.
And T, I love that story because it really plays into the second part of this first perspective, which is I take full ownership of where I'm at, what
Yeah.
I'm doing, and how I show up.
Yes.
And I know
Yes.
Tia, you chuckle because I tell this story that I read Jocko Willink's book on extreme ownership. And the first time I read it, I kind of thought, wow, that's okay, that's extreme.
Right.
Because he talked about as a Navy SEAL, like no matter what happened, no matter if he was involved or not,
Mhm.
he still felt ownership in every situation.
Mm.
And I think back to times where I was like, I don't know, that team over there, like that's their problem. They got to
Right.
figure it out. That is a classic example of where I did not take full ownership.
Right.
And even if that ownership means I need to shift to be like, that team's not figuring it out, what do I need to do or how can I help them move past that so they can
Right.
figure it out?
Right. Exactly.
Right? It just
Yeah.
is a totally different way to look at ownership.
Exactly. And it's
Mhm.
not like you have to solve all the problems. So you're not looking to
No.
solve their problems,
Mm-mm.
but you can help them find a solution or connect them to relevant resources that might help solve the problem, right?
Hmm.
And that's taking ownership.
Yeah. And I like to think of this one because when people say, that's not my job, I use the air quotes,
Yeah.
something we
Yeah.
don't want to hear. And I'm like, I tend to think, no, we actually all have roles. We're like a team, like a football team. If I'm playing
Mhm.
quarterback and I'm a tight end or running back, nothing's going to work. Same thing
Right.
happens in our food safety teams and in our organization. But taking ownership that, like, if I'm a running back and my quarterback has something going on, like, it's my job to actually go, what's happening? Like,
Exactly.
what's the roadblock here? What's the obstacle? What do you need to
Right.
get through this? Like, that's
Right.
what full ownership looks like.
Absolutely. And if you know football, there's many times that, amazing plays happen because someone that wasn't necessarily supposed to block ended up blocking someone. And that ended up winning games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone was like, hey, that's not my route, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't meant to block that person. so I'm not going to do it, then there's a lot of games that wouldn't have been won, including games in, I would say projects um,
Hmm.
at your organization.
Yeah. Yeah. The third bullet under our how I see myself is I put problems in front of us, not
Mm,
between us.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I love this one because as a leader, you have difficult conversations sometimes with people. You are not on the same page, or you need to figure out how to move forward. You know, this thinking about putting problems in front of the team versus between the team helps you have those difficult conversations. It's really the mindset on we all need to figure this problem out because it's the best for the team. It's not a
Hmm.
problem between us. Like this is where it comes in. Like it's not personal,
Yeah.
right? It's not a personal thing, and it's important for us to not make it personal, which is really
No.
what this bullet point is about. Is that as leaders, we can't make it personal. We need to talk about problems like they are in front of us, not between us.
Yeah, and I think this is a really big, really, it's a mindset shift in leadership that we've seen over the past few decades. Because when we
Mhm.
think of like traditional corporate, I'm going to use an office setting, right? Like the boss is on one side of the desk, we sit on the other side.
Yeah.
Like physically, we have set ourselves up to have something between us and like
Yeah.
buffer. But just think, so many times, at least where I've been in our offices, we have a little table. We're like, let's come on over here and sit together at this little
Hmm.
spot together, or these two
Right.
chairs together. So even physically, there are things that we do that put things between us versus we're in this together.
And I think as a leader, that's something to even think about. Like
Hmm.
when you talk with your people, is it always you at the head, them sitting across from your table, or are you talking at lunch? Are you talking, at a shared space? Are you
Hmm.
going to their space and having a
Yes.
conversation,
Yeah.
right? Versus like them always coming to your office. That's something. And again, that's a mindset set shift, right?
That's always hard to say.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something different, and that's even something where I've heard leaders say, well, I'm in this office, so I should be able to do this, and you have to do this because I'm sitting in the office, I'm sitting in this title, and in reality that just closes doors, that
Yeah.
does not open them. And so really thinking about that, you're in a leadership role to solve problems, right, for the organization, and to lead in a different way. It doesn't
Hmm.
make you any more important, right, to the work that's being done. So it's
Yeah.
important for you to share and be a part of the group as a leader.
And that's why when we talk about this perspective one of how I see myself, it's the
Mhm.
this is happening for me, not to me. I take full ownership of where I'm at, what I'm
Mhm.
doing, and how I show up. And the third one there is I put problems in front of us, not between us. That's
Yes.
all for us to be observing.
Yes. And we kind of talked about this, but before we move to perspective two, we start with how I see myself because that's
Hmm.
where it starts. It
Yeah.
starts with you understanding who you are as a person, so that can move into what our second perspective is how I see others.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how I see others is really around, leaders know others, meaning that they can really help create their success. So do I see my team as someone that is deserving of development? Are they deserving of opportunities? Do I see my team as allies? Do I see that we are all a part of the same team, right? In the same group, and going towards the same goals? That's really the second perspective on how I see others, right? Like,
Yeah.
yourself. Now it's like, how do I see others and how do I relate to others, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love Ashley that you just shared this example about being in an office with your leader and how, right, being in that shared space that really cultivates
Mhm.
a different relationship. And yeah, I'm sure there's times it was like not always so fun,
Right,
um,
right.
but it's also a way that really leads into this second perspective of like, well, how do I see others?
Hmm.
And like spending time with people. Which so our first thing is we talk with people, not about people.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
Because we've all had those moments, right? Where,
Hmm.
I mean, this is the classic, like about gossip train type thing or talking
Yeah.
about people where, Usually it's not like, wow, they did such a great job. And I hope it's that. That's what we're looking to shift to because that's
Mhm.
positive energy. But sometimes it's the like, who on our team isn't measuring up, or who did this, or how did that get messed up? And
Mhm.
those are conversations that every time we hear that we're talking about someone with someone means we
Mhm.
should be having that conversation with the person.
Right, exactly. I've even heard stories of like, I get feedback through someone else, right?
Oh, mhm.
And it supposedly came from the leader, but the leader has not had that conversation with the person. So
Mhm.
making sure as a leader that you are having conversations with your team, like what Ashley's saying, like in that shared space, it almost like opens it up to say like we're here, so we're having conversations with one another, and that's the whole push behind having a shared space, right? Like again, not always ideal, right? And a lot of companies have taken it to the extreme, but that was the whole idea around it, is that you're really having conversations with people, especially as leaders, that people can come and talk with leaders, and leaders can talk to other people in the
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't maybe know how to approach someone, or we don't know the right
Mhm.
question to ask, or sometimes we think, for whatever reason. But the best way to get information is a direct path, right? It's the most efficient, it's the most effective. Even if you don't
Yeah,
know the right words to say, that we would want someone to do that for us. And so part of how we see others is giving that, sharing in that respect and really honoring that by going to them directly.
right. And that moves into our second bullet point under this perspective is I believe everyone has good intentions, including me.
Hmm.
And so that's really extending that kindness and the benefit of the doubt to everyone. And really thinking about like as things happen, people had good intentions, even if okay, that landed wrong or
Hmm.
something else happened because someone said something. If you go into with a mindset of okay, that person had good intentions, let's talk about how do we rephrase in the future, or um, what tools can I help provide them so they can share the information in a way that it should be shared, but really thinking about like good going in with good intentions is so important in
Right.
really all relationships, right?
Oh, it is. I don't know how many times I've asked somebody, like, do you think they're really out to get you? And they're like,
Mhm.
well, no. And I'm like, well, they have better intentions than that, right?
Right,
And
right,
so I think
yeah,
sometimes when we phrase it, in the complete opposite way, it gives us that moment to pause and be like, no, people are not here out to get me.
right.
They have good intentions. So let's understand what that looks like and from their perspective.
Exactly.
Hmm.
I love it the way you asked that. Do you think they're out to get you? Because it's like, well,
Right?
why would they be out to get me? It's
Right.
like,
Well, how many times does that come up? Like, I can't believe they didn't do this last night, or I can't believe that over the weekend they didn't fix this. And it's like, okay, do you really think they're out to sabotage us?
right.
Probably not. There's probably an explanation, or, I mean, there's always an explanation. So,
Right. Yeah. People are busy, right? Like
yes.
people are busy and people prioritize things differently than we do.
Hmm.
And there was just misalignment on what we should be prioritizing, right? So
Yeah.
it's
I
and
remember. I remember one weekend, like we were waiting to get like a new conveyor in, and all of a sudden
mhm,
it doesn't come in. It was probably for an intervention, and we're like,
right,
"What is going on?" Like we were supposed to have that ready. The HACCP plan is ready, and they're
mhm,
like, "Well, actually, the belt they had the wrong belt with it, so they didn't want to put it in and not have it work." And we're like, "Oh, okay." But our
right,
first response to it was like, "What is going on here?"
right, right, exactly, exactly. So I
Hmm.
mean, I think that one's a good one because it really does shift your mindset to say, okay, people have good intentions.
They do.
So I don't need to come with the fire, because people are not out to sabotage you or out to get you, right?
Hmm. And that really leads into our next one, which is there's always more than one version of the truth.
Yes,
And if you've been with us, you know that I talk about we have these glasses, our perspective, and we see through those all the time because that's what we know. And all because that's what we know doesn't mean there's only our version of the truth. Other
right.
people have versions of the truth. That's important for us as leaders to really embrace.
Right, exactly. And this is definitely a hot topic, it seems. And I understand why, because we're so used as technical experts in
Hmm.
our field, we're used to looking at data and facts and absolute truth. And we typically speak in absolute truth, right? Like
Hmm.
we really don't try to talk on things that are like this gray area, right? And sometimes our roles can be a little gray, especially when it comes to quality. And that's sometimes frustrating for us because we like to talk about and speak on facts.
Hmm.
And so we try to influence others over and over using rational persuasion. And if you've heard us talk through influence methods, right? Rational persuasion is not enough to get people to commit. As a matter of fact, it's one of the least effective ways of getting people to commit to change.
Hmm.
And so understanding that is important. And then moving to understanding what that person's truth is will help them get to committing, right? So, like, I think it also flows into Ashley's question on how do you convey good intentions to a more negative person that sees enemies around every corner. What I would say is try to understand their truth. Why do they see enemies at every corner? I had a person on my team that she was a negative person and she saw everyone as an enemy. And for me, like until it impacted, like she saw me as an enemy, I remember sitting down and talking with her around, I know we don't know each other that much. I'm not that type of person. Why do you feel that way? Like why did it come off this way? This is what I was trying and really understand where does that come from? And you'll find that that person has been burnt in the past and they've tried to come in with good intentions, right? And someone has thrown them under the bus or whatever it happens to be. And so that really gets down to the root cause of I understand this is the life you've been living, right? Like this is the truth that you've been
Hmm.
and you don't want to run into that situation again. Now you're in a new team. You're in a new space. And this is what happens when you come in with those negative coming with those negative attitudes and seeing everyone as an enemy. You end up making enemies.
Yeah.
So shift your mindset to other truths that someone is not your enemy, that they are
Hmm.
here to help you, and that they're not going to throw you under the bus, and that they didn't try to throw you under the bus when you felt like you did, right? Like
Right.
shifting your mindset a little bit to someone else's truth can be extremely impactful, right?
Hmm. And the other part with when we talk about more than one version of the truth, you know, part of it is our brains are hardwired to like things that are complete. So if we have a
Mhm.
story, we like a beginning, we like a middle, we like an end. If we don't have an ending, our brains will make it up, whether it's the truth
Yeah,
or not. And
yeah.
yes, it will draw from other things that we know, but it will be our perspective. And
Mhm.
so this plays into so many ways, so many different aspects. So if I'm leading people and I don't know my people well, I still intentionally or not make stories up about them,
Right.
about
Yeah.
what they've experienced and why they do things and what motivates
Mhm.
them. But it also goes on the other side. Like, just think about when you have a situation in the facility and you need to investigate. I mean, there's a reason why we ask many different people because everybody has a different version of that truth.
Right, exactly. And it
Even
doesn't mean
papers. Sorry,
right.
I'm like, even
It's
papers.
true.
We talked about scientific papers that are
Yeah.
published. How often are those disproved or they lead to further uncertainty? And so
Mhm.
data in itself can be is a tool, but it doesn't always mean it's an endpoint.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I love that because you're right. We come up with conclusions ourselves
Hmm.
based off of a little bit of data or sometimes a lot of data, but we don't have that ending, so we conclude it ourselves.
Hmm.
Like we might conclude that, oh, okay, because this person can't see my truth or can't accept what we consider to be the facts or data, we think that they can't be leaders. And
Hmm.
that's not true. They just need a mindset shift, right? They
Yep.
need to think about that there is more than one truth and that there are multiple perspectives out there. And as leaders, we must be able to interact with people that share different viewpoints and have different perspectives on the world, on
Mm-hmm.
how things should be done, on processes, on how SOPs should be set up, right? On why we should check something every 30 minutes versus every 2 hours. Like those are the conversations that we have, and we all have our own perspective and our own truths that have
Yeah.
been proven to us, right? Like you and I, we have conversations all the time when we're helping clients build their programs on like, oh, I've done it this way. Oh, I've done it this way. Oh, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the risk we were preventing over here, right?
Yep.
The risk you were preventing over here, and how do we make that fit for our client? Both are
Mm-hmm.
right, right? And both organizations or multiple organizations, sometimes we're pulling from, they have their own truths, right? Like they've thrown away a bunch of product because they checked every hour. So now they're checking every 30 minutes or every 15 minutes, right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it right. It just means
Yeah.
that that is their truth. That's what they're living in.
And that's why, as a leader, it is so important that you are intentional about shifting your mindset so that you not like so that you actually see others. And it's not
Hmm.
just like passive. It's these intentional things about we talk with people, not about people. It's
Right.
I believe everybody has good intentions, including me, and there's always one there's always more than one version of the truth.
Hmm. And I would say, like, for some, this is the hardest step,
Hmm.
because we feel like we know ourselves, right?
Hmm.
And maybe you've done work to know yourself and know your strengths, and a lot of times we just stay there. We stay in what we know. We
Hmm.
stay in who we are versus actually seeing others and
Hmm.
seeing them for who they are, and seeing them for what they need, even if it's something that we don't need, or even if we feel like, oh, well, you shouldn't need it at that point.
Hmm.
No, they need it now. And they're saying they need it now. How do you meet them there? How do you see them, right?
Hmm.
How do you see them and meet them there, and make sure that they're getting what they need, regardless of the way that you see the world?
Yeah, and those two parts are so important to know ourselves and then to be able to see others because that all leads into this third perspective, which is how we see each other.
Hmm.
Because when we when we understand that we truly have the same goals, but we may have just different perspectives, we can begin to see each other in a different way.
Yes, this is when real growth happens, right?
Hmm.
In the leadership mindset. So, I I love this one because it's like putting everything together,
Hmm.
right? And this is how we're starting to work together. So the first
Yeah.
bullet point under this is, there is enough to go around for everyone.
Hmm.
And, like, this is really where the concept of hashtag better together comes from, that there really is enough for everyone. And you sharing a process, or you sharing about um, how you think about a process, or how you've done it in the past, it doesn't take anything from you at all. It
Hmm.
actually helps us grow, right? Because there really is enough for everyone.
And I think this really kind of counteracts what we've been told as a society, right? Well, there's
Mhm.
only so much time, there's only so much money, there's only so much this. And you know what, right? In a sense, right, there is only so much time, but that's also where there's enough to go around. It's just on how we choose to use it.
Right,
And so this really is about, you know, if you've ever felt slighted or like you've been passed over, well, your time is coming.
right,
It is
exactly.
because there is enough to go around.
Hmm.
And someone else's success is actually our success too, even though it may not seem so obvious right now.
Hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I talked to people who, they felt, oh, why did that person get that role? I really wanted the role. I thought it was my time. And then turns to find out that person is the person to help them get into a leadership role.
Hmm.
And so they were the right advocate for them. They just needed to be in an elevated position to actually advocate for them. And so it's
Yeah.
like those things where you think about, like, okay, it's not my time now. What do I need to focus on? You right? How do I see myself? What do I need to focus on, that this is happening for me to grow my strengths, to work on my opportunities, so that I'm ready for the next opportunity that comes around.
Yeah. And it's really grounded in this law of attraction, right? If we think there's not enough,
Mhm.
there will never be enough. If we think
Right.
there is plenty and there's abundance, there will be plenty and abundance.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. We even think about it in the consulting space, right? Like it seems like there's not enough clients around for everyone, right?
Hmm.
But there are. There's hundreds of food companies out there that not one consulting company can manage, and
Hmm.
not every client needs everything, right? Like we at Catalyst might not be a great fit for someone, and so we actually recommend and refer clients to people that we know that would be a great fit. That's when because you think there is
Hmm.
enough for everyone.
Yeah.
And this client might not be a great fit for us. Well, we know someone that it is, and so we want to make sure that they get the right connection there. So I mean, we've done that multiple times, and
Hmm.
leaders must think that way, right? To kind of step up into this leadership role, and then also to help shift food safety culture,
Hmm.
right? Like we have to think about, like, for food safety culture, we have to share. Um we have to share the things that we're doing, and sharing best practices across functions, across different food safety teams, right? Like,
Hmm.
are you in competition with the facility down the street?
Yeah. And that all comes from our next one, which is we believe there's always a path to a win-win outcome.
Yeah,
So these things kind of go together. When we think there's scarcity, that there's not enough, then we also think that there's a win-lose type situation.
right,
And like if you win, I lose, or vice versa, or that compromise has to be the way to an outcome. It doesn't have to be. In
right,
fact, I think when we get into it, there's always different ways to get to where you want to go. And can we be creative enough to find solutions where everybody gets what's needed?
right. Yeah.
Sometimes we're not
Mm,
willing to go that far. We're like, well, they said they can't do that, and we want this. Like,
right.
wait, okay, can we explore more? Because I bet we can have both. They don't have to be
Mhm.
independent.
Yes, yes. And that's great when you could really help inspire the team to think in a win-win situation, that we
Hmm.
all can get what we need,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Let's see. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry, Tia.
oh, no worries. The third bullet point is we believe in being candid with each other, right? So like this is a big thing. We've all heard about the meeting after the meeting, right?
Suck.
And
They suck.
they suck. And it slows us down. It slows us
Yeah.
down to have to do the pre-meeting, the meeting, the after meeting,
Oh,
right?
clear
Like
sign of no safety, of like
exactly. Mhm.
psychological safety.
Exactly, which is 100% needed for a food
Hmm.
safety culture, right? As a leader, it's your responsibility to create those spaces that people can be candid with one another. So people do
Hmm.
not feel like they have to come from a pre-meeting to go into the after meeting, because it slows people down. You're not getting the true story, right? Like if you're the leader that's not in the after meeting, you don't know what's being said. You don't know the true thoughts and feelings of your people, which
Hmm.
ultimately is your culture, right? And that's so important to create that atmosphere that people are safe to share
Hmm.
what they need to share.
Yeah, and I think as a leader, sometimes this is challenging because once again, we kind of put on this corporate mask of what we think a leader is supposed to be and how we're supposed
Mhm.
to look and how we're supposed to act and what we're supposed to say.
Right.
And really, this one is about giving ourselves permission and even challenging ourselves to be brave and
Mhm.
courageous, to ask the questions that we're thinking but holding back on,
Right.
exploring more, and having conversations that, maybe we feel a bit uncomfortable, but it's the right conversation that needs to be had for that moment.
Right. Right. Exactly. And sometimes they're tough, right? Sometimes they make you uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But the thing of it is, we always say practice make perfect, right? Practice having those conversations and have those conversations. Eventually, they won't seem awkward, or
Hmm.
they won't be as difficult, because you really are fostering this atmosphere of being candid and open with your teams. It's only going to get easier for you as a leader and for your teams to share.
Right. And remember, it all relates back to how we see each other. And if
Hmm.
we're putting on masks or screens or, putting up walls, it's not going to let us see each other. And
Right.
for us
Yeah.
to be an effective, high performing team and having the culture that we want, those masks and screens and barriers are not going to help us get there.
Absolutely. And we need it. We need it to grow our food safety cultures
Hmm.
because, I mean, how many times, and even thinking about your food safety culture right now, do you really know it?
Hmm.
Do you know what people on the floor are thinking and that's making the product? Do you know what your leadership teams are thinking? Do you
Hmm.
know what how they view food safety culture and how they prioritize it? Are you just are you having those conversations that you would know? That are you pulling from other sources that may or may not be the real ending, right? The real truth is only your truth, right?
Hmm.
So, making sure that you get that information, and that might be through, your food safety survey, right? For how many times do people write something on like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But when you have the conversation with someone and have those candid conversations and promote an atmosphere of openness when the real stuff comes out, and you can go
Hmm.
back and say, "Oh wow, Tia, you put that you were fine. You say that you're fine every day, but now that we're having these conversations, you're like, oh well, this is happening, and this
Hmm.
equipment's breaking down, and I can't do this right, and all these things that need to be fixed that you didn't know about, or barriers that need to be removed that you didn't know about, just kind of spills out when you kind of set up that space to have those candid conversations.
Hmm. And once again, as a leader, not just a technical expert, your role is to engage and understand others. And
Right.
so that is also part of this, how we see each other. And so
Hmm.
promoting and understanding there's enough to go around for everyone, believing that there is always a path to a win win outcome, and
Yeah.
believing in being candid will help foster the culture and the leadership that you really want to put forth.
Right. Absolutely. So
Hmm.
those are our three perspectives really around transforming your mindset from a technical expert to a technical leader. And
Hmm.
so, again, the first one is, how I see myself. The second one, how I see others.
Hmm.
And then the third one, how we see each other.
Hmm.
And, we're curious on which ones you're drawn to, which
Yeah.
ones you need to work on, which one are you rocking at? What would you add? What would you add to these mindsets and to the bullet points underneath the perspectives? We would
Hmm.
love to hear your perspectives. We would love to hear your viewpoints and what you've dealt with in your careers.
Hmm. And if you would like a copy, we have this as a PDF.
Hmm.
Drop us an email at hello@foodsafetykatalyst.com and just put something in the subject like mindset, and we will shoot this over to you so you have your own copy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as you start thinking about where you're going to go, right, you're going to start making some change. And I'm always curious, is this change going to be comfortable?
Hmm.
Are you going to be outside your comfort zone? And I always say, if you're comfortable, you're not doing it right. And
Right.
here's why, because in order to have change, there has to be some discomfort. You have to get through
Mm.
this middle to get
Yeah.
to that other side.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, but here's where it always stops, right? When we get into this moment of discomfort, that's where people stop and they go back
Hmm.
to what we know.
Hmm.
And so, leadership mindset is a shift you have to get through.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
do you want to stay here? Do you want to get over there? Do you want to
Hmm.
be the technical leader that people need you to be, that you want to be, that you deserve to be?
Hmm. Yeah. We
Then
need you to be. We need you to be this technical leader, not just a technical expert.
yeah. Yep. And here's the thing. We always say you don't have to make these type of changes alone. And next week you're going to hear from a panel of
Yes.
people that are right from boot camp that have gone
Hmm.
through our early technical leader program, because that's where we really start with mindset.
Yeah.
And we want you to be able to ask them questions about, what is it like? What type of shifts have you seen? What are you working on? What'd you do when you were uncomfortable? Whatever those things are, because
Right.
there is help to get through this, because it's not just going to happen overnight, and it's not going to
Yeah.
always be easy.
No, and a lot of times we can't do it ourselves. We really
Mm-mm.
do need a team of resources to help us. We need a coach, right, to say, "Hey, this is how I'm thinking about the situation. Am I really looking at it the right way?"
Mhm.
or am I really just leaning on my own understanding of the situation, right? One thing that I love about our leadership programs is that we offer group sessions. And
Mhm.
so you will be in group sessions with other people that's outside of your organization to bounce ideas off of and learn from what they have going on. And so, our boot campers, which you'll hear from next week, they have really develop these relationships with people outside of their organizations, where it concluded last week and everyone was like, man, we're not going to see each other from week to week.
Right. Yeah, when we said, what do you really want most next? They're like, we want to have an in-person meeting together.
Right,
And so these
exactly.
bonds are really strong, and that's that
Hmm.
network to help continue the work because not everybody can do it. Not everybody's doing it.
Exactly. And that in itself is a different mindset, right?
Mhm.
Where you have to think, I can't do it on my own. I need my teams. I need other resources inside and outside of my organization. It might be, I need to reach out to TNGO to help me, right? Because we're here to help you. We're here to partner with you.
Mhm.
We look at food safety culture and we know that food safety culture begins with having technical leaders, and so that's where we focus on
Mhm.
getting you there and helping you shape your food safety culture into what your organization needs it to be.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's always the message I love is that when you think about food safety culture and that's on everybody's mind, it really
Hmm.
starts with you stepping into being the technical leader that you need to be. That's where
Yes,
it starts. Taking that ownership.
absolutely. That's right, extreme ownership.
Yes.
We should have him come and talk on our real talk. That would
Yeah,
be
we
really
should see if he's available. Yes.
hey, would
I'll
you
I'll, I'll work
want
on connecting.
to right.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I know we are almost at time, and this is a topic that is near and dear to us. And like we said, it really shapes the way that we look at leadership and the way that we train and coach on leadership.
Hmm.
So please reach out to us if you have any questions. We have our email up. We always answer those emails. We also share a newsletter weekly to our email distribution list, just giving these tidbits on leadership mindset and leadership in general and how to be a technical leader.
Hmm.
So please, join that as well, and add to the comments, add your perspectives, because again, we go back and look, and all of our videos are on YouTube. So check out our
Hmm.
YouTube channel, like it, subscribe to it, turn on notifications, because we also put our replays up on there.
Yeah. So thank you everybody. If you're here live with us or if you're here on the replay, thank you for joining us and being part of it. We're here every Wednesday at noon Eastern, 11 Central, and we will see you next week when we have our panel with our boot campers. So
Yes,
have a
looking
great
forward to
week.
it. Bye, everyone.